Coming to our last, I wouldn't call it a panel, it's more tower talk. Tamzin, Rupprecht, and Barry, you have the unique chance now because you talk about competition in times of omnipresent change. You have the unique chance to give a resume of the whole conference, at least if you want. But if you want, you can also talk about something else. So the floor is yours.
So welcome everyone to this Power Talk, Competition in the Age of Omnipresent Change. I'm absolutely delighted to have Barry Lynn, Executive Director of the Open Markets Institute in Washington, DC, also a prolific author, writer, commentator on antitrust, economics and politics and more. And also delighted to have Rupprecht Podszun, who is a member of the Monopolies Commission of Germany and also Professor of Law at Heinrich Heine University in Düsseldorf. I'm Tamzin Booth. I'm Editorial Director of the Economist Group in London. I'm a former business editor of the Economist newspaper. And I also recently founded our new Antitrust Summit. And I was listening carefully to Benoit Cœuré this morning, and I confess that I have added to the circus of conferences to which you alluded. So, I certainly want to address my thanks to President Munt for the honour of the invitation and to Barbara as well to join such an extraordinary conference today and yesterday. So I think we've just got 30 minutes or so to get into our discussion before we release you. I've got about 11 questions, so that means about 2 minutes each for the panellists. So the first thing I want to ask, starting with Barry perhaps, is what's the single most remarkable, interesting new thing that you've heard today or yesterday at this conference? And please, you've got to pick one thing.
Okay. Well, actually, first I just want to thank President Munt and Barbara and this amazing team for putting on this conference. It's actually just been a spectacular conversation, and it's a great honor to be here. In terms of the single thing that I heard, Executive Vice President Rivera, she used the word power yesterday. She used the word democracy, and she used both of those words before she used the word innovation when she was talking about what is the purpose of competition policy. Power, democracy, and then innovation. And actually, and just throwing one extra little bit of spice into it, President Munt has repeatedly used the word resilience. So 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't think any of these words would have been used. We would have been still talking about, consumer welfare for the most part. So what we have seen is a radical change, not just in the United States, but in Europe, in how we look at the purpose of this whole body of law, which is it's democracy, it's human liberty, it is dealing with power, and it is creating a resilient and secure world.
Fantastic. Rupprecht. Single best thing.
I'm a German law professor, so I have to go with Stefan Habert, of course. That's my duty. He was the president of the Constitutional Court, and he said a sentence that I've been thinking about even while others were talking about sex, and that is, what is the connection between prosperity and our rule of law-based system? I think he said our constitution depends on economic growth or on economic prosperity. And I wonder whether he's right, whether we are really a democracy that cannot stand an economic crisis. I hope we are not. And I think he also made if I may comment on that, may I comment on that? Or okay, still have half a second. I think it's a bit different. I think it's not so much economic wealth or prosperity, but the hope for opportunities. I think that if people can take the chances, and this is something we do with competition, if people can take the chance and see, okay, I can really succeed in the system, there may be a better future for us. I think then we are still on the safe side, and I think that's important to keep in mind for competition lawyers.
I'm going to add my kind of best thing as well, and for me there was a real connection between the Deutsche Telekom CEO and what he said and President Harbath. And it was that spirit of ensure the democratic state is able to act, and also from Deutsche Telekom, that sense of you can't regulate your way to kind of digital success. And you know that there is actually the potential for Europe to be able to build physical AI. So I thought there was a real commonality of spirit in those two ideas. So going to you again, Barry. I mean, you've spoken about some very big abstract concepts just there in your opening. I mean, how much really does competition law policy enforcement tools? I mean, how much does this sphere of competition really owe to all of that? I mean, aren't these ideas, you know, they're about globalization, deglobalization, they're about a lot of other things beyond competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to actually put things into perspective, and I think we need to be honest about the situation we face today. You know, and we face the gravest set of threats to democracy, to human liberty, you know, in Europe since the war, in the United States since the Civil War. You know, the foundations of liberal democracy, we can trace them back pretty clearly. Foundations of liberal democracy were established 4 centuries ago, actually in Europe, not in the United States, you know, in the fights against, you know, all-powerful monarchy. You know, in England, this was against King James, and then King Charles. You know, on the continent, it was against people like Louis XIV. In England, there was a victory, and in France, there wasn't. But the foundations were that you know, it was establishing a rule of law that applied to the monarch. The monarch was under the rule of law. The monarch could not choose, could not pick winners, could not pick losers. The monarch could not create property and destroy property. Property was protected from the rule of the monarch. And, you know, so that's, you know, how did we achieve that? How did we sort of institutionalize that over the last 400 years? You know, through constitutional structures. You know, I'd say the U.S. Constitution is the greatest anti-monopoly document in human history. You know, and then anti-monopoly law and policy was the way that we extended the Constitution into the political economy. You know, so this is what we do in this room, what you do in this room. It is the foundation of everything that we hold dear. It is the foundation of our societies. It is the foundation of the future of our children. It is the foundation of our ability to sort of, you know, think freely and to seek the spiritual fulfillment that each of us want. And, you know, so, you know, this conversation was degraded quite substantially 30, 40, 50 years ago when we were told it was just about price. This is about the realization of human, you know, of what it is to be human. And it's like the people in this room. You know, and now what we see today is with Donald Trump, you know, he has overturned a set of rules that were established 400 years ago and that we kept alive for 400 years. He has personalized the choosing of, you know, who wins and who loses. You know, and he's doing it not just for corruption. Corruption is way too small a word. It is for centralization of power. You know, but just to be clear, just in this, I know, you know, but this is not just a matter of Donald Trump. You know, it's like when we sweep Trump out of the White House in 3 years, we will still face an existential threat, and the threat is posed by the oligarchs, the autocrats of big tech. These systems of power are the real foundation of the crisis. They're what Trump stands atop their back. He is not the source of the problem. The source of the problem was bad competition policy, a fixation on efficiency, a generation ago that set in motion what results today in this autocratic control by Google and Amazon and Facebook over what we think and what we say and what we do.
Great, Barry. I want to come back to your views on US antitrust in a little bit. First, Rupprecht, I mean, coming to a kind of case study of geopolitics meets competition. So if we look at the defense sector, this is, incredibly relevant. Sort of consolidation of this industry is crucial for, is potentially crucial for European rearmament. And we heard, of course, from the Airbus chairman about, their own merger, Airbus, Thales, Leonardo in space. So as a case study, briefly, I know this is a big topic, but how important do you think competition policy is to help Europe rearm effectively and without sort of, having no money left for welfare states and then prompting fiscal crises? I mean, isn't it other stuff as well? Procurement, ability to spend. Is competition key?
To ruin your concept, I first have a comment on Barry. Sorry. Of course, I can second everything you said. But I also found it very interesting what Benoit Curie said this morning, that we also need to look into the traditional sectors, bid rigging of public procurement in building, construction sites, whatever. And this leads me to defense, of course, in a second as well. Or what we heard yesterday from the Spanish Competition Authority about bus driving. I mean, Eleanor Fox is a champion for making, going with antitrust to the people who earn the least or who are most vulnerable in society and help them out. And I think this is also an important thing that we always need to keep in mind. Everyone knows that I'm really strong on big tech and on anti-big tech, but I think it's also important to keep this in mind, that there are other sectors in society which are equally important, particularly for people. And I think, Barry, you agree on that, of course. Now on defense, I think this is one of these sectors. This is one of these sectors where we put a lot of money in, and everyone knows that if you buy weapons now, they are in supply, or they are sort of forming your defense backbone for 30, 40 years. So the decisions we take now for a system integrator that is a certain weapon or so will stay with us for decades. And if we make mistakes now, if we don't make sure that this works in a way where interoperability is secured, where other companies have a chance to get into the sector, even though we have taken a first decision now to say, okay, we buy this sort of weapon system nowadays, make sure that others can play with this system, that they can go into this, make sure that startups have a chance. And I think with the enormous spending we have, it's a fantastic opportunity to innovate, to get competition running in the sector. But of course, that means, as you say, public procurement rules and competition rules have to be particularly strongly watched in this sector.
More contracts going to startups as opposed to primes?
I think 10% or even 30% of spending going to SMEs, to startups also, that would be a great opportunity to really foster the sector and to foster innovation.
Barry, focusing your attention outside big tech onto these other sectors. So Deutsche Telekom, bit tech obviously, but so and Airbus. I mean, we heard from two incredibly prominent European industrialists yesterday. What did you make of their requests, their arguments? I mean, Deutsche Telekom wants consolidation. Airbus wants its merger to go through. I mean, how impressed were you?
Every time I open up my AT&T mobile bill, I curse the merger of T-Mobile and Sprint. Going from 4 to 3 was terrible for me, and it was terrible for pretty much every other American consumer. So, when you are drawing up your next guidelines, I would, according to the guidelines, according to Thomas Valetti, you should have a rule of 4. So, in terms of Mr. Obermann, I'm a huge fan of Airbus, especially coming in, from a country where Boeing is the counterpart. I found his argument very nuanced and sophisticated and provocative. Now, I did, notice a couple contradictions, because he actually said resilience depends on distribution. And he said, well, then also resilience could come from mergers, but he didn't say it with a whole lot of conviction. And as the people who have to decide whether there shall be more consolidation towards efficiency, I will remind you of United Launch sort of systems in the United States was the merger that Bill Kovacic was talking about earlier, which was the top two rocket makers into one. And actually, Bill didn't fully fill you in on that, because after you merged number one and number two together, you know what we lost? We lost all capacity to make rocket engines in the United States. And we, for 10 years, were dependent on Russian rocket engines, you know, for our military launch. So just keep that in mind next time someone wants you to go from 2 to 1 for the purpose of national security. It's the opposite happens. You know, Lockheed Martin and munitions, not a good story. You know, here locally, Northvolt, not a good story. Alternatively, Operation Warp Speed under Trump 1 in the making of vaccines, they had multiple. They put out like, you know, we're gonna support 10 different makers. You know, it's like everybody gets, you know, gets government support. NASA right now, we got SpaceX. That's a success story. The new NASA head of NASA is desperately trying to get Blue Horizon and Project Cooper up to speed, so we are not dependent on one. That's what they're doing. You know, so in the United States, where we have gone often from 2 to 1, or we just have one, what we're trying to do desperately now is to go to 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, so as you're thinking about this, just you know, keep in mind the very, very clear lessons of what happens with these kind of mergers.
Rupprecht, one of the strongest themes from the conference has obviously been, you know, the need for Europe to resist the control and power of big tech. But another, you know, more positive element has been, how does Europe itself catch up with the US and China in that regard? So what are the non-regulatory steps that you would recommend towards helping the homegrown European digital stars? And, you know, I'm thinking about some of these companies already have scale, ASML, SAP, you have Mistral, Helsing. I moderated a fantastic French founder, Hélène Huby, who started the exploration company. She wants to start, it's going to be a European SpaceX. And these people have, you know, Hélène and her counterparts have, you know, they've got complaints about the environment. So what would you do to, you know, what are the concrete steps you'd take?
Okay, I think one remark is important if we have this debate. I think in conferences like these, it often looks a bit to me as if it was the responsibility of the state or even the competition agencies or someone to drive European companies to succeed. I mean, first of all, this is the companies who have to be creative, innovative, who have to invest, who have to take the right decisions, who have to do the right things. I mean, Tim Höttges was here yesterday. He had scale 20 years ago. Why didn't he invent AI? I don't know. Mark Zuckerberg didn't have scale at the time. Why did he do that? I mean,
but obviously regulators create the environment, the labour law,
of course,
the bankruptcy laws.
I'm happy you've read I'm happy you've read your Ordo Liberals or the Economist, or maybe that's an Ordo Liberal journal, I'm not sure. Okay, so, but I think it's important to say that. Please, companies, do your job, right? And don't rely on government. Now, on government, of course, government has to do something. I think the first lesson, and saying this here with these people in the room is, of course, obvious, but of course, we need to have a single market and we need to have a strong EU. I think it's absolutely important that we don't go into national sort of energy prices in Germany are so high. Yeah, then go to France or go to Sweden and build your capacities there if you need it. I think that's what EU is about, right? And we need to be there. I think that's generally a very big problem in our countries in the EU, that we are completely fragmented, even in Germany. I mean, 18 data protection agencies in Germany. We have national initiatives on AI in basically every little city. I'm sure that your hometown has an AI officer and AI initiative. This is not how it works, right? You need scale, you need clusters, you need things like that, etc. And in particular, I think that our job is to bring excellent research, which is there. Everyone tells me AI research in Europe is still top of the league. bring that together with the strong industrial players who have the data, who have strong domain data, who are still sort of lacking this step to go into AI. So all these companies are there. We have the research facilities. I think we need to bring these two together. And then, of course, there's capital markets. There is something like marketing. Sebastian Truhn, who's one of the fathers of the Waymo car, he always tells me the most important thing in Germany is to smile. Start smiling and you'll sell much better.
Barry, I wanted to follow up with you on that topic as well, but I'm really mindful of time. So could you, let's just skip on, and then I'm going to further 5 quick questions that I want you to respond each really quickly to. But Barry, can you give us a quick update on what you make of sort of US and I mean particularly the DOJ? I mean we know that you've been in communication with and know well the neo-Brandeisian movement and Lina Khan, Jonathan Kanter. I don't know whether you've got particular sort of insight here. Perhaps you don't. But what do you think is going on? Is it sort of a turning away from the sort of populist Gail Slater type, J.D. Vance type antitrust, or is there something more complex going on?
Acting AAG Yosefi and Deputy AAG, Calais, they got a tough job, and I don't want to make it any tougher by speaking about them. So it's a. I don't want to speculate about what's in their minds. When they wake up in the morning, it's difficult. So it's what remains of neo-Brandeisianism, or actually sort of American democratic republicanism. It's the neo-Brandeisianism is just a term for the foundational philosophy of the United States. We are going to distribute power. So. What remains of that is actually a revolution in thought. We talked about that a little bit earlier today, but in July of 2021, President Joe Biden stood up on stage and said, Robert Bork, that was a terrible idea. Chicago School, a terrible idea. It led to concentration of power. We are done with this idea. We are going back to the original American vision of distribution of power. So that is a radical change. When you get old man Joe Biden up on stage, shaking his fist at somebody who's already dead, a dead scholar, that's important. It shows you the importance of ideas. So what we've done is we broke the hold of the old ideas, and that sets everybody free from the hold of the old ideas, and here in Europe and in the United States. So in the United States, as we march forward, we're marching forward free from those ideas. Now on one side, then you have people like Stephen Miller saying, "Oh, it's just a world of absolute power. It's the might makes right." Well, actually, if you establish the right set of laws, no, it's a rule of law. And so what we now have is the fight between a bunch of people who want rule of law and a few people who want might makes right. And who really wants might make right? It's about maybe 12 people in America would benefit from that regime. And then we have 330 million people who would benefit from rule of law. So we are going to win. So that's what's going to happen within the 330 million people are going to trump the vision of the 12. And
this is a fantastic injection of optimism. Thank you. So for the remaining 5 questions, I just want to really look forward to 2026, 27. And I'm really wanting sort of, super quick answers from you and for you to make a prediction, essentially. So Rupprecht, do you expect we're going to see another prominent NCA head, National Competition Authority head, ousted in 2026, either loudly or quietly? Yes or no?
Am I to nominate now here in the room, or?
It's fine to evade the question as well. I know it's a tough one.
Let me say one thing. I think it's important not just to look at the heads of the agencies, because the work is done by other people in the agency. Oh, you work too, but sorry, but I think it's important what it does to the people in the agency. And it's I think Shakespeare once wrote a line saying something like, it's in ourselves that we are underlings. And I think it's important also for people in the staff to resist. Even if your head gets ousted, you are not alone and you can still do something.
Great. Barry, what's your prediction on the US midterm result? And does it matter for competition policy or not really?
My prediction is, I think the Democrats, Trump is trying to establish the foundations, or the Trump administration is trying to establish the foundations for challenging some of the outcomes. It's like, will any of these outcomes be close enough to actually matter? I don't know. And does he have the power to actually disrupt elections across the United States? No. Just the way that elections are run in the United States, at the local level, at the state level, it's very, very difficult to disrupt. Thank God for Lockheed Martin, because we don't have enough drones for them to send at all the polling stations, which is about the only way they could disrupt the elections, is by blowing them up. So it's, so I think that the Democrats will win, pretty resoundingly in the midterms. But there are the possibility for other sorts of things happening internationally is high, but that's something we all live with.
Thank you. Rupprecht, do you see a really strong will to strongly enforce the DMA in 2026, or are you worried that this will be weakened post the review as well?
My feeling is that Donald Trump was really good for enforcing the DMA, and I now fear that he loses the midterm elections, because then maybe DMA enforcement falters again. No, honestly, I think that that in Brussels there was a sort of change. That's my perception. That now people think, okay, yes, we probably have to stand against this. We have to enforce. We have to push. Yep. After first phase of sort of a bit more thinking of the trade-offs. But yes, I'm positive. I'm an optimist. Yeah, let's do it. We need it. There's no other chance. Yeah.
Great. Barry, do you think the DOJ will still challenge Warner, Paramount, Skydance? Will US state attorneys general get anywhere against it? And do you think, Rupprecht, European regulators will take a crack at it?
No, they're not. DOJ is not going after the Warner Brothers, Paramount, and the states will. And the states will probably, there's a good chance, very good chance they will prevail in the end. And it also, just the mere fact that they bring the case sort of creates uncertainty about the long-term outcome of that, which undermines the ability of the people who run the corporation to actually manage.
No comment.
Okay. With that, I'd like to thank you both hugely for. One more comment.
Yeah. So actually, this is a thing. This is important. I think as Europe thinks about sovereignty. My dad grew up as a sharecropper in Plant City, Florida, which is outside of Tampa. As a sharecropper, he picked strawberries from the age of 6 until he was 17. And his father was living on a farm that he didn't own. Someone else owned the land. So at the end, when they got the money for the strawberries, they kept half and they gave half to the owner of the land. And sometimes they might have had to give more, depending on how well the contract was being enforced at any one time. And if Europe is not sovereign, if you don't make a decision to sort of seek sovereignty at as many places as possible, you will live as sharecroppers on other people's land. That's a fact, and it's not a good life. So it's not just the kill switch, it's also just like, whose land do you live on? Are you living on your own land, or are you living on someone else's land? I urge you, as someone who grew up with these stories, you want to live on your own land.
Thank you.